This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Got a lot of stuff happening in the association. And, of course, man, it's always a pleasure to be able to break it all down with my right-hand man's www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my man, Mr. Warrenshaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. My man taking advantage of that holiday season, gallivanting all around the globe. But he is always here. Like Ja Rule says, I'm always on time. I'm always on time. I'm right here. I got you, dog. What's good, brother?
I'm trying to be on time and, catch up on what's been happening and, spend a little time with some friends and family away. But back here, and still keeping tabs on what's going on in the NBA. And as you alluded to, always a lot happening within the association. So excited to get things popping here, man, and talk about all the stuff going on this week's show and pay some homage and maybe do a little criticism of some preseason acquisitions, if you will.
Yeah, man. Interesting show that we're going to have on tap for you guys. We'll kind of look at some of the key acquisitions, trade or free agents that were acquired so far in this offseason. How are they faring out in their new digs? And of course, this is not to say that, things don't change, the climate of the season. I mean, you could clearly see teams who are struggling are starting to find their groove a little bit as we get past the first quarter of the NBA season, while other teams, are holding firm. Came out hot out the start, but, now have kind of settled in a little bit, maybe have fallen back to the pack some. So it'll be interesting to see how some of the guys that we're going to be talking about, how they've impacted those teams, either have gotten them out to a fast start, or maybe their slow start is what's also enabling some of the early season struggles for their team. So we'll get into that. Obviously, we got some news and notes stuff that we got to discuss. But as always, we appreciate you and yours for hopping on board with us. So be sure to get my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA. Get at me at Gameface Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. You know where to find us. Just add the Baseline in search and just put us on, and you are going to be rocking with the best, right? So also, too, if you want to catch any of our previous episodes, you want to catch us directly, just go to www.thebaselinenba.com. That is the homepage for our podcast. Also know, too, that we rock with the 19 Media Group family. So the 19 Media Group be running these content streets. So as always, be sure to go and check out our show and the plethora of awesome talent shows that are all lined up via the 19 Media Group network. Go to www.19mediagroup.com. All right, so let's get into some news and notes real quick, Shaw. Karl-Anthony Towns quietly having, I don't know, a mercurial-like kind of season. It's weird because I think everything is being so overshadowed by what expectations that we have about Anthony Edwards. But the Minnesota Timberwolves have struggled. And now to add a little insult to injury, it's been reported that there is I think it was a grade 4 sprain to Karl-Anthony Towns. I can't recall how severe or high it is, but he's expected to be out anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks. How big a blow is this for the Minnesota Timberwolves?
I think just for a team that's trying to, as you alluded to, get their footing, right? Right now, just a game below 500 as we record. So they've been okay, but this is a team that has aspirations of being one of the top upper echelon teams of the Western Conference and obviously doing some things within the playoffs. The Gobert pairing has not been great. The Edwards situation has been a little bit of a roller coaster, I'd say. I think Anthony Edwards is still a very, very good basketball player, but fitting all of that into what Minnesota wants to do, I just don't think it's gone as smooth as they would have expected, or maybe not expected, or what they would have wanted for sure. D'Angelo Russell's a little lost in the sauce with this. So 4 to 6 weeks for a team that definitely has a lot of new parts and needs to gel is a significant blow. We'll see what their identity is established while Cat is out of the rotation here for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Hopefully Gobert, Russell, and Anthony Edwards can kind of pick up the slack a little bit.
I got to tell you, and I'm only going to say this before we move on to some other stuff need to get into, but I'm really surprised with regards to D'Angelo Russell. I really thought him coming in and playing with his boy, then having a talent like Anthony Edwards, and then seeing that the organization goes all in and gets Rudy Gobert. I understand that, making Rudy Gobert fit and, everything that's pretty much on Finch's plate is a lot. But I'm just really surprised that Russell has not really stepped up and really established himself as a kind of quality guard that I think the Minnesota Timberwolves so desperately need. Listen, we've seen signs of it in the past, and I don't know if whether or not it's because he's in Minnesota or he just kind of lost his way and with all of the politics going on and stuff. But I'm just really surprised that D'Angelo Russell hasn't really kind of taken the reins. And it's not even a question of scoring; it's a question of being able to put these guys in the best position possible for all of them to thrive. We're just not seeing that from D'Angelo Russell.
That's the point I'd say I would hammer home. I would have hoped that maybe he would have said, you know what, we have a lot elite level offense on this team. Gobert wants to be a guy who can score and not just defend the rim. Russell could be the guy that takes a step back and really, get into that 8, 9, 10 assists per game type range if you really wanted to. So at 6 a game, it's not terrible. I don't, I'm not just disparaging him at all. But I think just, hey, picking your spots a little bit easier and just saying, you know what, I'm going to be the guy to sacrifice. Let's get Cat, Ant-Man and Rudy Gobert. Get them their touches. And I'll fill in where necessary because I think he has that ability to be a little bit more selective if he wanted to. But again, still early enough in the season, so maybe he doesn't get those assist numbers up. But yeah, definitely let's see him share the ball a little bit more. I think that was a great point.
Absolutely. All right, so now let's go ahead and focus our attention out in Chicago. The Chicago Bulls looked like they were struggling out the gate, but so far they've been catching fire with some really impressive wins over the last couple of weeks. Billy Donovan has now received a contract extension. What do we make of the Chicago Bulls and their confidence in Billy Donovan by offering this extension?
I mean, clearly they are very confident in him and what he's been able to do in the short time that he's been there. As I said just a couple of weeks ago, I didn't really like the aura around the roster. They had some pretty stinky wins. I mean, stinky losses rather. And DeRozan and Levine weren't really jiving. And all of a sudden, hey, they look a little better. I had a big win against Milwaukee the other night or whatever. DeRozan has been able to show shades of the player that he was last year, while Levine is still working his way back from some injury. And they still have Lonzo Ball to return at some point. So shouts to Billy Donovan. Great situation for him. I think there was some murmurs and whisperings. Well, might he been the first one to go this season? Had things to continue to go on the slide. Seeming to ride the ship a little bit better. Back to where I thought they'd be. I thought they'd be about a 500 team. Fighting for a playoff spot. But definitely not, as the 12 or 13 seed in the Western Conference I think were a couple weeks ago.
Listen, man, Billy Donovan has always been a guy who kind of walks the edge. He's always been someone where in the early beginnings of his coaching tenure with whoever he's with, it just has that feel like, oh, he's right there. Like he can only win unless he's got star players around him. And then somehow it clicks. And then he puts together these long stretches of successful coaching careers, right? And I speak about that because of so many opportunities, I think, when he was at Oklahoma City, where they could have basically had, parted ways with Billy Donovan. But Billy Donovan has always figured out a way to get the best out of the players that he has been given. I think that this is a good move by the Chicago Bulls simply because, they're going to need some type of stabilization, whether that's going to be, this team that's put together is going to really be good enough. I think that there's still going to be some questions that have to be answered about this roster because from a health perspective, they just can't stay healthy. So it'll be very interesting. And someone like Billy Donovan has managed, very, how should we say, shallow lineups, right? Don't have the particular depth that he would be asking for and looking for, throughout his coaching career to be satisfied with. So I like the idea that the Bulls have some confidence in him. You can see that the Bulls have actually kind of turned things around a little bit. Maybe some of those stinky wins has been giving a good odor of a wake-up call for them to turn things around. And it's already
did the same thing I did. It's stinky losses, and the wins have been acceptable. So anytime you win, no matter how you win.
That's my ADD speaking. My apologies. I went from Billy Donovan to Ray Donovan on that one. Sorry, my man. All right. So a couple of feel-good things to get into before we get into our breakdown. Out in Dallas, Kemba Walker is expected to sign with the Dallas Mavericks. If people remember Kemba Walker, much maligned guard who, lost him, or got lost or got, what they say, dashed away by the New York Knicks, got dashed away by Charlotte, got dashed away by so many different teams. But it looks like the Dallas Mavericks think they may have a place for him. He may be looking to get signed. And then Markelle Fultz, I'm sure you're going to probably say that is official, it's inked. And then Markelle Fultz, he's expected to make his season debut. So let me ask you this quick question, Shaw. Who are you who you throwing the snaps up for? Are you snapping up for Kemba Walker or Markelle Fultz?
I got to do both and not trying to cop out. I'm just really excited for both those guys. Markelle coming back from injury is a huge situation. Orlando, as we continue to allude to, injury just preclude or like you can't build your chemistry if guys aren't on the floor. So that's been Orlando's like theme song for the last couple of years. So guys just don't stay on the floor. So you have a guy like Wagner and Banchero and guys like that who you want folks to be able to get and just understand how they play and know where they need the ball and know how to play off with those guys. But in the Kemba's case, he's just one of the better guys in the NBA, just a solid human being, understands what it means to be a good teammate, and fortunately for him, at least for now, he's not going to take the Dwight Howard route and go to Taiwan or anything like that. I'm excited for both of these guys. I don't know what Kemba's role is ultimately going to be in Dallas. I like the signing, but I just don't know how many minutes he's going to get. But I think Fultz probably means more to what Orlando ultimately needs long term.
I like it. And you're not copping out by it because I would love to see both of these guys find some kind of placement or minutes on the floor, some way, somehow. And maybe this is an opportunity where if Kemba at least exhibits the veteran voice that I think that Dallas Mavericks team needs from time to time. And who knows, man, he may even find his shot. I mean, he's known to kind of do certain things, man. You always think that you count Kemba out and then he suddenly comes, you put him into the game and he pulls out, Villanova, miracles. You know what I'm saying? Like he just comes in and just does his thing. So I always enjoyed watching Kemba Walker play. And I think under the right circumstances, a team could certainly utilize him. To your point, I'm trying to figure out where Jason Kidd can find usage for him. But his veteranship, his veteran leadership skills and, his insight and knowledge of the court and the fact that he can absorb some minutes. I mean, he's been chilling for a while. So it's he's got fresh legs, right? No doubt. Sure. And Markelle Fultz, again, man, I would love to see him probably play with somewhere else because the Magic are so invested in their young guards. But if you're gonna put him out there, make us see the all Fultz. I want to go all Fultz. You know what I'm saying? Don't half-ass it or nothing like that. Give me all of Fultz. Because worst case scenario is you can't find a place for him there. He could have a home somewhere else. There will be a team that could truly utilize a guy like Markelle Fultz. He's done so much to put himself right back into this situation where he can give himself a genuine opportunity for him to thrive and make something left of, his NBA career. So good stuff all around, Shaw. And, as always, man, trying to keep up with all of the happenings in the association and stuff. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And again, I said, we'd love to end on that note, if you will, from the news and notes section. Two guys who we have a lot of respect for. Fultz went from vilified to somebody that people really do want to see well, especially coming off of, all the injuries, all the stuff with his shot, all that stuff. So really excited for him. And again, what Orlando can hopefully try to build as they're a young team and they need their guys. Like you just can't do anything if your players are not on the floor.
Absolutely. All right, coming up, Shaw and I are going to get into our subject of the breakdown. And we got some guys that we want to talk about. Have they been helping or hindering their respective teams since their offseason either acquisition, trade, or free agency pickup? We'll talk about these dudes and what kind of havoc they're creating, whether it be good or bad, here on The Baseline. Time to break it down to the bone gristle. Time now for the breakdown. Cal Lee Warrenshaw, Baseline NBA podcast. And our topic for the breakdown, we are talking about the key acquisitions that took place in the offseason, kind of taking a look back. I know it's only a quarter part of the season, but I think it's a good sample size for us to see, what's been good, what's been bad about some of the moves that have obviously been made in reference to these key acquisitions. And obviously, Shaw, there's a litany of them. We'll probably fly through a few of them, but there's certainly a couple that we might want to focus our attention on. Probably the one who's had, let me ask you like this. Of the names that you have listed here that we would want to discuss, I would want to know from you who has had the most marketable impact on the team that he has played on.
So it's funny because I was going to ask you that question, so you beat me to it. So definitely we'll throw this back to you. I think I got to give you a couple of names. I think Donovan Mitchell in Cleveland has had a significant impact. And I think as we did our stuff coming into the season, hey, which players could probably have the biggest impact on their team? I went with Donovan Mitchell. I think you went with Gobert, right? And, I think at this stage, Mitchell is probably that guy. Well, Jalen Brunson has probably had the biggest statistical increase, but I don't think it's translated to the Knicks, catapulting anywhere in the Eastern Conference.
Right.
So I think Brunson's been a great acquisition. I just don't think it's been as impactful, and at least not in the short term right now. So for me, Donovan Mitchell, but I'll throw a name out there or two names out there as well. Lauri Markkanen, who we've obviously talked about a lot, with Utah's early season success, although they've started to slip. But Jerami Grant in Portland, averaging 21 a game, has been great since Dame has been out.
It's a second go around in Portland.
Yeah, and I really like how he's been able to step in there offensively when necessary and do what he was really brought there to do, was really to be a plus level defender. So to me, I think Jerami Grant's probably the most underrated free agent or trade acquisition, whatever acquisition from a team this offseason. And Portland, it's translated to a significant amount of wins for Portland that I didn't necessarily see coming. So those are my answers, if you will.
I'm going to shock you, Shaw. I'm going to really shock you on this one. So if we were doing our previous segment, right, talk shit or abandon ship, I would have probably told you it would have been time for me to abandon ship on Rudy Gobert, but not in a bad way. I don't think Rudy Gobert is necessarily the problem. I think that everything else around and whatever's going on with Minnesota. You could even make the argument that Chris Finch has not really done that good of a job to figure out a way to implement and really kind of quell down a lot of the turbulence that takes place out there on the court with his star players. These guys have got to figure out a way to be able to play together, or else it really puts a hamper on his ability to make decisions. And you can clearly tell too, this team from a depth perspective, I don't think is as strong as they were last year. Finch doesn't feel confident reaching into that bag, so to speak, and pulling out guys who can come out there and give significant contributions the way that he did. I mean, I know that they picked up Kyle Anderson and these guys and stuff, but I think maybe in a way defensively they've been good, but I don't think that they've offensively are in that level of flow like they did last year, which a lot of people kind of raise their eyebrows and say, oh, this could be a dangerous team when they were going into the postseason. But I'll tell you the person who I think has made the biggest impact, Shaw, and I'm going to eat my words, bro, because you and I know I was not fond of the Celtics making this play to bring in Malcolm Brogdon, right? But I think Malcolm Brogdon will be considered one of the sneakiest, if not most brilliant moves possibly in Brad Stevens' career if this Celtics team continues to trend the way that they do and play at the level that they're playing. And I'll tell you why. I wondered if whether or not Malcolm Brogdon needing to be the starting guard or needing to provide significant minutes or whatever whatever the intent was in bringing him in. I didn't know if whether or not with a new head coach in Missoula, I didn't know if whether or not the Celtics could be able to pull this off. But the one thing that I forgot about, and we talked about this, Shaw, is the lack of depth that the Celtics had coming off the bench. And you got a guy like Malcolm Brogdon who is willingly embracing coming off of the bench. And not only is he getting his, he is also making that Celtics team defensively a formidable defensive team. One of the things that we've seen at the beginning of this season, Shaw, is that the starting rotation has struggled in the early outset of the season to hold teams down like they were last year, especially when they went on their run. They just couldn't score the ball consistently offensively. But now you've got somebody who, when you sit Brown down or you sit Tatum down, and Brogdon comes in and he can get you 18 points per game. He doesn't need a ton of minutes. He's efficient, but he also adds quality and depth and shooting opportunities for the rest of those role players to be able to take those threes that they're taking and be able to shoot the shots the way that they do. I was not expecting to see this. I wasn't expecting to see the level of effectiveness from Malcolm Brogdon because of him, this team from a bench perspective, defensively, have helped out the starters, while the starters are starting to find their rhythm being one of the more elite defending teams as a starting five. Brogdon has been critical in certain situations where Missoula can basically put him in there and he can lead next to Smart, hold teams down while the offense finds their rhythm and make strong comebacks or make strong surges in the second half. I'm telling you, I'm totally floored by what I'm seeing from Malcolm Brogdon. And this is what the Celtics are going to get all year long. I have to revisit the number of wins that the Celtics might wind up taking, by the time we get to season's end. They could very well be. I'm more confident about them getting 60 wins than a lot of the other teams that we probably would think would roll around there. Maybe the Milwaukee Bucks, you know what I'm saying? But if the Celtics are going to go toe-to-toe with Milwaukee, man, I have no problems with saying that, yeah, this is a 60-win caliber team simply because of the way Malcolm Brogdon is helping that second unit and coming in and just being a quality six-man role player, like he's a Swiss Army knife. I love it. Totally love it.
Well, it wouldn't be a baseline show if you didn't have a defensive rant. So,
Oh, thank you. Yes, exactly.
We know how you love the defense.
Was it more of a rant or more of a rah?
Well, let's go. Let's even make it.
I had the pom-poms out.
I'll say it was a soliloquy.
Okay.
You are good for those as well.
All right.
But I think it's nice to see that you've come to the bright side, of the Brogdon situation in Boston. And I think what he's been able to do. And I don't know that he's going to win not defensive player, sixth man of the year. I think Christian Wood in Dallas was another acquisition that I didn't add it to the list, but Wood is averaging the most amount of points. He may ultimately get into the starting lineup there in Dallas as well. But I think what Brogdon does to steady Boston's overall depth, as you alluded to, I think is massive. So a great acquisition. I think has made great impact as well too. Celtics are now leading the Eastern Conference, and doing so very well with guys in and out of the lineup. So that's the thing that I've been most impressed with. But that's a whole nother conversation. We can get into Boston and kind of what they've been able to do, holistically, maybe in another episode. But I like that pick as well. I'll say one thing, about two guys who I expected to have a greater impact at this stage, who just haven't. And they're both, ironically, defensive first type guys. Ben Simmons and PJ Tucker. Simmons is obviously battled injury. Is going through something now again with knee soreness. He didn't look comfortable and confident to begin the year. Then all the things, that happened in Brooklyn. So that didn't help that situation. Then I think with PJ, while we know his acquisition was really meant to be effective in the playoffs, I still thought I'd see a little bit more at this stage, especially when they've had some guys out. So could they really just turn and lock in again, a la Game Face Lee here, be a defensive stalwart, with guys like D'Anthony Melton coming in and spelling Tyrese Maxey, et cetera, et cetera. I just haven't really seen it. And that's to say that Tucker won't turn around, won't have an impact. I just thought I was going to see something immediately. And I feel like it's just been a little bit lacking from that standpoint.
Let me just put it like this. I don't know whether or not the signing of PJ Tucker was more about Tucker's abilities on the court as much as I think Tucker's emotional investment in his guys. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like the relationship that he has with Harden, the relationship that he has with Embiid, I just think that has more weight and validity to why it was necessary for the Sixers to get him. I know this sounds really far-fetched, Shaw. You know me. I like to go places or put thought and put perspective in thought of certain things that we may not think about. It may seem outlandish, it may seem crazy, but then that's the whole point, is to open up more conversation about this. The one caveat that I don't think we talk about at times is the relationship that players have within, their own culture, within their own unit. You know what I mean? Sometimes you sign a guy and you don't realize the impact that guy really has until you see how it's emotionally taking a toll on the team when that person is not there. And I'll harken back to Isaiah Thomas, right? Like, while we understand that this was a business move by the Boston Celtics at that time with what the Celtics did and not figuring out a way to re-sign Isaiah Thomas, regardless of the fact, that he obviously was going to be compromised with injuries and things of that nature. It's just the emotional aspect of what he gave that team, that unit. You just don't break that up, man. Not after getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think that if you're the Philadelphia 76ers, sometimes you just need that. After all of the chaos that this team has gone through with the Ben Simmons situation, then with Harden and, all of what happened and stuff like that, sometimes you need something that has nothing to do with the game of basketball itself as far as the X's and O's, and more about the relationships that the players get and have with the guys that they want to go out there and go to war with. And I think that, to me, more overall anything else, buys PJ Tucker enough time. I think we're going to question a lot of the X's and O's because that's more on Doc Rivers. If he doesn't think that PJ Tucker is capable of holding his own, hey, put his ass on the bench and you give some of these other guys some opportunities, some more minutes. But I genuinely believe that getting a guy like PJ Tucker on that team has really helped this team emotionally settle themselves in and turn things around in what looked to be a very tumultuous season in the early outset.
No, I'll give you that. I mean, I think, but we can't be turning him into Udonis Haslam.
No.
He needs to get some minutes out there
another 8 years
and be a defensive power.
No, but not unless he gets some, he keeps showing off some of these fly,
well, that's his whole bag.
Yeah, but I agree. No, but it's not about that, right? Like, I'm not saying, I don't know what this is going to make of the team per se. We obviously don't believe that the Philadelphia 76ers are championship medal. We think that they are certainly playoff worthy, but all of that is going to really rest on what version of Embiid you getting, what version of Harden you getting, what version of Maxey you're getting, right? But I think part of that brings it all together is where PJ Tucker is with all those guys. You know what I'm saying?
I get it. Listen, I know you're going to stand up for a defensive guy, if nothing else. So I'm with you on that for sure. So
no, I didn't bring up the D at all, bro. I never brought up nothing.
Whoa! Settle down. No, but listen. I think
I am not trying to insinuate that PJ Tucker is okay. Well, yeah, just go ahead and finish it.
All right. Well. We'll move away. We'll move away from PJ Tucker.
Clearly see, I'm unabashed about
the story is yet to be told. So maybe bringing him up was a little early, so to speak. The last guy I want to just touch on real quickly is Dejounte Murray.
What? Lauri Markkanen? What?
Say that again.
No Lauri Markkanen?
I mentioned him earlier. He said because I thought we talked.
Oh, he just gets a mention.
Yeah, it's a passing. He got a flyby. We've talked about Utah a lot, so Lauri's doing a great job there too. So he was in my top 3. Probably most impactful free agent acquisitions, for the year. But I think with Dejounte, while I think he's, again, getting his quote-unquote numbers to some degree, I said on Twitter the other day, he's a little more swaggy than I thought he was. And he's a little more showy. And part of the reason why he's probably not in San Antonio anymore is not necessarily translating, to the W's in the way that I think Atlanta wanted to early on. Again, still very early, but Atlanta, I think, expected to be a top 4 seed right now, and that's still very possible. But Dejounte needs to focus, in my opinion, a little bit more on
possible because of what the other teams are doing, not necessarily what the Atlanta Hawks are doing.
I mean, I think in some capacity, he should be like running rampant to me because teams are going to focus on Trey. John Collins is also having a down year. I mean, he had a good game the last time.
Where do you think the struggle really is with this team? Because this team is not good defensively. You brought Dejounte Murray in there, obviously to help this team, to be better defensively because they certainly took a step back after, Nate McMillan's coming out party of turning things around for this team. I haven't seen anything that's given me the perception that they figured this thing out to be just a more balanced team, letting their defense complement what they're expecting to do offensively.
Well, I think it's ironically, it's kind of the opposite. They've improved a pretty decent deal defensively. And they've slipped offensively. Like they've slipped from 2nd to 22nd right now, compared to last year to this year. So, up from 26 to 12 in terms of defensive rating this year. So like they've been better. They've just been different. And I didn't think I was expecting this level of variance to some degree. And Dejounte, while again has been impactful in a certain level way, it hasn't translated to make everybody else on the team better. It really is kind of the Trey and Dejounte show. And that's not what they need. They need Hunter to be able to contribute. They need Capella to be able to contribute and Collins to be able to contribute. They just need Bogdanovich to come back and play basketball. So to me, that's where I'm just like, the Dejounte thing is a little bit, it's still unsettled a little.
Well, that was a flashy move. The Hawks wanted to be
flashy. And for all those picks, but again, they're just right now. I want to see them be more focused on like, hey, how do we win these games and not worry about showing up the other team? And
do you think
early on, I've gotten a little bit too much into that aspect.
Do you think that when it comes to Dejounte Murray, that he should be more of the 2 guard and Trey be more of the point guard?
I think that's where it is. Trey's still 9 assists a game right now. So he's still the primary playmaker. And Dejounte is focusing, maybe he's defending those point guards. Well, Trey is now off ball, and guarding guys in that aspect. So Dejounte can utilize the size to defend multiple positions. And I think that's where you're seeing some level of positivity on Atlanta's side. But again, Right now, they're just above 500. They've had, they were 4 or 5 games above at some point. Then they went on a little bit of a skid. As I continue to say, it's still early. I just think that it's going to ultimately pay some bigger dividends than it has thus far. I just thought we'd be a little bit further ahead than we are today.
So you do believe that the Atlanta Hawks will be marketably better than, say, Jalen Brunson's New York Knicks?
Yeah, I think they're better than New York, by more than by more than a little bit.
Well, I'm
Um,
just saying by the time, we get to the end of the season, you'll think that they will have separated the gap between them
yeah,
and
I mean, and if I'm wrong, then that's because somebody didn't do their job,
Mhm.
right? So
Well,
that's just really how I look at it.
right, yeah, I mean, to me, that's the thing that I think really sticks out at me. Look, do I think Jalen Brunson was a good signing for the Knicks? Absolutely. They
I
needed
absolutely do.
they
Yeah,
needed good scoring, right? They needed but again, and I default to the idea of what your expectations are from the point guard position. And then I will couple this by saying, when you get a guy like Jalen Brunson, who are you coupling him with? Who are you complimenting him with? Right? Which is why I think a lot of people say, "Oh, you should have went after Donovan Mitchell." Probably, because then at least the way Jalen plays, his ability to play with Donovan complements each other far better than what Jalen has been doing with RJ Barrett. I just don't think that Jalen Brunson has helped RJ Barrett. Now, I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying I'm not seeing where RJ Barrett's game has elevated in any way, shape, or form now playing next to a guy who really plays his position because they're two scoring guards, right? But you're asking Jalen to be your point guard. And I just don't see where that plays. And it's interesting
Mhm.
because I think it's the same situation that you have with the Atlanta Hawks and Dejounte Murray. So it'll be interesting to see who figures it out fastest. From a talent perspective, I agree with you. I think the Atlanta Hawks should be the better talented basketball team, but I don't know. I'm seeing like that much of a separation gap with the way things struggle. I would not be surprised if the Atlanta Hawks have to do something by the trade deadline to give us a clear picture of what this team is going to look like when the playoff push really begins. And I would not be surprised too if the New York Knicks have to be compelled to do the same thing as well. Because you knew what you signed up for when you brought Jalen Brunson onto this team. This team has taken a step back defensively, so they can't even rely on that. And they're not even getting enough consistency offensively. They just know that they're getting good numbers from Jalen Brunson, which ain't speaking much because it doesn't translate to W's. And you can say the same thing about the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, well, I think long term, Jalen is probably a really great long term investment for New York. In the short term, and
Right,
hasn't
I
really
think
been in it.
he's a small piece to a much bigger puzzle
Yeah,
as soon as we understand what kind of puzzle the New York Knicks are trying to put together. That's
yeah,
always been the problem with the New York Knicks. Sometimes they just get guys but have no freaking plan, long-term plan about what this is supposed to mean and translate to. They just kind of
yeah.
figure it out as they go along, and you cannot do that in the climate of this NBA.
Yeah, and I think with Dejounte, it's gonna just be it was flashy, like super flashy, but other moves are coming, and we know Collins and Capella specifically have been shopped and continue to be shopped. So once December 15th and January 15th hit, we'll see if one or both of those guys are still on this roster, as they're gonna look to build around Trey and Dejounte specifically. But again, I think long term, for especially from where the Knicks were coming from, Jalen Brunson is probably the biggest offseason acquisition of really any team with the exception of Cleveland. That's probably going to be there for a very long time. I think, and with Donovan Mitchell going to Cleveland, especially if the Cavs are going to be able to be one of the better teams in the Western Conference, some people looked at that move early on and said, you know what, hey, he'll finish his contract. He's going to go to New York anyway. I'm not so sure. I know we're only 22 games into it or whatever, but I think that's the making of something really special there. So I think those two moves could be really, really, truly, truly long-term situations for both of those teams.
All right, man. Well, good stuff, Mr. Shaw, as per usual. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's great to see though that like some of these guys have already kind of given us a good idea of what their makeup is kind of shaping up to be. And we just got to follow it closely to see if whether or not it's gonna again
Yeah.
enable or disable the teams that they're currently playing for, and whether or not additional moves are obviously going to need to be made in order to continue to build on the momentum with some of the acquisitions that have been had over in this part of the offseason. Awesome show this week, Mr. Shaw. You know what I'm saying? It's funny how time flies, man. Just talking that basketball stuff, bro.
Yeah, man. And I think it's great to be able to give people their flowers. It's great to be wrong sometimes and just say, yo, hey, look what this guy is doing, what this person is doing, and really making an impact that I didn't necessarily see coming. Sometimes we were right though, and it's rough when you kind of have to maybe do a little bit of criticism, but I'm really excited for all of these acquisitions. Like, I don't think there's any true buyer's remorse from any of the teams, and at this stage, especially with it being as early as it is. I just feel like, what, this wasn't the final move, right? This wasn't, checkmate for a lot of these teams. There's still things that need to be done to improve their rosters.
Absolutely, man. Once again, man, we appreciate you guys for hopping on board with us this week for the Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw, you know where to find us, right? Be sure to get us at NBA Baseline. Talk it up with us. Let us know what you're thinking. Anybody else that you feel like has been a key acquisition, good or bad, man, let us know where you at, man. We love to engage with our peoples, man. You know where to find us. For the Baseline, Callie, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. You know we do. Catch up with you next time.